What's up, guys? Back again here for Split Decisions podcast. Fitz and Jeremy coming off, a great weekend of fights. UFC 289, I'd say, was a pretty big success. UFC's return to Canada. Um, and we had a really major, big time boxing fight in Teofimo Lopez and Josh Taylor that, at least from my perspective, delivered as a fun fight. Um, but yeah, we got a lot to talk about. What's up, Jeremy?
What up, Mike? Yeah, I mean, this weekend was great for combat sports. I'm really excited to get into the show.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We got to start it off at the top. I mean, major news coming from this weekend is Amanda Nunes going out on top, laying down two belts and two gloves in the octagon. Really cool moment, celebrating with her family, with, the UFC family, and just gonna go down as the GOAT of women's MMA, I say, as right now, at least. It take a lot for someone to surpass her legacy and just awesome career for Amanda Nunes. So definitely want to just start it out with saying congrats to her.
Yeah, congrats, Amanda Nunes. I mean, she is by far clearing away the greatest women's MMA fighter of all time. A couple of these last performances have been sloppy, and we'll get into this fight that just happened, but just overall, I mean, the dominance, man. Like when Juliana Pena beat Nunes, I was screaming at my computer because I could just not. It was insane,
Fathom it,
and that
yeah,
yeah, and that just shows you how good she is.
literally. Excuse me. Yeah, there was, a lot of cool moments from that fight. I think Amanda, we'll talk about it later when we go down the card, but one thing crazy moment is John Anik talking about the eggs inside of Nina Nunes.
I swear, this guy brings up the most
Like,
out of
bro,
pocket random shit that you don't even need to talk about.
I mean, it has to be on purpose at this point because he knows he got
Yeah,
flamed. He
he's
gets
trolling. He's
flamed.
trolling. He's a godly troll. But he's my favorite commentator.
Really, I honestly don't like John Anik. I can't
What?
stand him. He does the fake. I hate his laugh. I feel like his laugh is
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
And he's
his laugh sucks. His laugh, yeah, his laugh
like it's
sucks. His laugh
so
sucks.
fake. But I mean, he grinds, and he's passionate about it. So can't
He's
hate
like
on him for that.
he's
And
the
he's
only he's yeah, he's the only consistent guy that's there every single event.
I like Brendan Fitzgerald because we got the same last name, but
Oh yeah, he's not every event, but he's at most of them.
yeah. Yeah, and then I think we should jump over to the Teal fight and then hop back into the UFC. This was a major fight. It was at MSG. So only pretty much real big time fights are at MSG, and Teofimo Lopez really impressed. The scorecards were a little closer than I would have thought.
Yeah.
But Josh Taylor did do good work early on. But all that matters is that the right guy won. The right guy got his hands raised, which in boxing is definitely in boxing or UFC is not a given. But Teofimo really returned to form. I mean, I know he won his last fight, bouncing back from this loss, but this was like a return to form, a statement win over your boy, the undefeated Josh Taylor. And Taylor's no easy out, man. He's a beast, and he showed that he definitely gave Teal some problems, especially early on. But man, Teal was fast and had some really slick combos, and the stamina was perfect. He he was strong throughout the fight and got stronger throughout the fight.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like this was hard to watch. I'm a huge Josh Taylor fan. One of the first boxing fights I ever watched was him versus I think it was Jose Ramirez. I forget, but one of my first boxing fights I ever watched live was a Josh Taylor fight, and he won that fight. He looked really good. So ever since then, I've been a huge fan of his. But man, Teofimo Lopez, like as you said, returned to form. He looked amazing. He looked like the Lopez that beat Lomachenko. He was working. He was beating Josh Taylor the whole time. I personally scored it. I scored it 117, 111, Teofimo Lopez. There was one scorecard that I think was 117, 111. The other two were like
Yeah,
115, 113.
yeah. I think it was 116, 112, and then the other
Yeah.
two were just 2 rounds. Teal won by, which is close because Teal pretty much from the fourth round on, Teal kind of took over. I would have said he won every round, every
Yeah.
round past the fourth, beside pretty much.
Yeah, Lopez took over. I scored the fourth round for Josh Taylor, but like that one was pretty close. I
Yeah.
scored every single round, fifth and beyond for Teofimo Lopez. You know what the big thing in this fight was that Teofimo Lopez made Josh Taylor miss. Like the whole fight, Josh Taylor was expending himself on those missed shots, and Teofimo Lopez was just like, winning off that, like gassing Josh Taylor out. And then also, you notice like the power difference. I mean, when Josh Taylor would hit Teofimo Lopez, Lopez would barely even react apart from like a few big shots. But Teofimo Lopez would hit Josh Taylor, and Josh Taylor would like bounce back, and like his head would swing backwards. Teofimo Lopez just had the clear power advantage. He dominated, and like even when Josh Taylor would block Teofimo Lopez shots, they were still affecting him. This was a great win for Teofimo Lopez. As much as a Josh Taylor fan I am, it was sad to see, but Teofimo Lopez did look great in this fight. I mean, we'll see who he's got next. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options. Apparently, they're talking about how Haney might have a clause to do a catch weight fight. Apparently, Haney has like three options. One's a rematch, one's Shakur, and then one's a catch weight bout with Teofimo. That's what Bob Arum or whoever offered him.
I mean, I'd be intrigued to see whoever Teofimo Lopez fights. If he fights Devin Haney, man, I think Devin Haney would win that. I don't see Teofimo Lopez doing too much for Devin Haney, but he's got a lot of intriguing fights out there. I mean, he looked great in this fight. Like he was hitting Josh Taylor with some really good combos, and a lot of the stuff he was hitting Josh Taylor with were just like straight punches. Like he wasn't even having like crazy looping, like crazy combinations. It was just simple like straight punches. But he was doing damage on Josh Taylor, and you see like Teofimo Lopez wasn't really attacking the body at the beginning, but he was started to attack the body at the end once it was started opening up, and he was really hurting Taylor to the body at the end of the fight, which just shows like his ring IQ and his game plan was on point for this fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was definitely one uppercut Taylor landed that was sick, off like a miss or something, and he stunned Taylor with it. But you really got to give it to Teal, man. I'm definitely a fan of his. I mean, for a young fighter to be on top of the world, after he beat Lomachenko, then to face adversity, lost, take the first loss of his career, have a lot of people write him off, and now come back and he was an underdog in this fight. He was almost a 2-1 underdog. So it's really nice to see a young kid like that be able to battle with some early adversity in his career, and he's going to be here to stay. And there's big fights in his future.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's about all we got to say about that fight. Unless you have anything else you want to add at the end. So
No.
for you, who's next for Tio?
Oh man, I honestly I don't know. I mean, I think that Devin Haney fight could happen. Tio actually retired after the fight, but I don't like nobody actually believes him. He might be just trying to get out of Top Rank, which could open up like some different fights for him. We'll see, man. I mean, it'll be intriguing no matter where he goes, what he does. Um, yeah. What do you think?
Maybe Jack Catterall.
Oh, I mean, that'd be a banger. I mean, Jack
Yeah,
Harrell did beat Josh Taylor pretty much in their last fight.
and he looked great in his last fight too. So I mean, that's definitely
Yeah,
a banger. But I don't think that fight will probably happen next. It's too much to lose for Tio.
yeah. I'm not sure, man. Junior welterweight's got some studs up there. Regis Prograis, who's fighting soon.
Yeah,
Jack
I think
Harrell,
that
as you
that could
said.
that could definitely be a name, Regis.
Ryan Garcia?
He'll
Nah, Ryan Garcia
he'll
does.
Ryan
Yeah, Ryan
Garcia not taking
does
that
not
fight,
want
dude.
that fight.
He's gonna fight some taxi driver next.
Yeah,
Yeah, but let's hop right into the UFC card. We're gonna start from the prelims, make our way up. Um, Diana Belbita got the night started for the Canadians. I mean, real quick before we jump into the breakdown, Canadians 6-0 at home. It's pretty sick. 6-0. Shows anyone who had a Canadian fighters parlay some
yeah.
serious bread.
I'm half Canadian, so it was fun to watch.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah, Diana Belbita, she's I think she just lives in Canada. She wasn't born there, but she looked pretty good in this fight. Maria Oliveira, stick to Instagram modeling, cutter sucked, looked terrible. She got a takedown, a couple takedowns. Belbita swept her same time with the same thing. Belbita, looked all right, but really, I think the highlight was how bad Oliveira looked, and I have no idea how she picked up a win in the UFC over Gloria DePaula. But I like Belbita. She's long. She's long. She's a pretty good striker on the feet. She shows straight punches, knees. Um, Before tonight, I think she had some real deficiencies in her grappling game. She would get stuck on bottom a lot, except bottom. She was able to escape tonight and work some of her own grappling. But yeah, low level women's MMA fight, but both these fighters look pretty good. But Oliveira, cut her, please.
Yeah, I mean, you said pretty much everything to say about this fight.
Yeah. Next fight was a really cool one. We saw Steve. This is a tough last name. Urkig welcomed himself into the top 10 of the UFC. Short notice, weak notice against David Doverak, who's a very tough fighter. He's very well rounded. He's good everywhere. He came in shape. He fought well. Doverak, it was a close fight, 29-28, I think, or 30-27 on a couple scorecards. But yeah, the commentators were talking about it a lot during the fight, but you know, this Australian wave of MMA is really serious. These guys take it really serious. And this guy, Steve Urkeg, was really good. He's known as a submission artist. He definitely showed off some good grappling in this fight, but he also showed off some really good skills on the feet. He wobbled Dovrak and he got 50 bans for this performance from Dana White. So he's definitely happy with that because he was probably fighting on like an 8-8. So awesome
Yeah,
performance, and he's now in the top 10 of the UFC. That's pretty cool. Within 1 week of your life, you go from outside of the UFC to in the top 10, and you could be fighting who knows next. Could be two fights away from a title shot.
yeah. I mean, to face off against David Dvorak in your UFC debut, I mean, that's a really hard debut, and he showed out. It was impressive. He's now won 9 in a row. He's on a win streak. And it's good to have, it's good for the flyweight division. The flyweight division needs some talent injected into it. So this is exciting. Keep an eye out for Steve Ursig. I always love watching the ground guys, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and then Kyle Nelson kept the momentum rolling in the next fight for Canada. This is a win Kyle Nelson really needed for his career. He's kind of been not really someone I'd consider to be UFC level, but he went out there and take Blake Builder. Blake Builder had a little hype behind him going into this fight. I don't really think it was warranted. Kind of like a weird style. He was throwing some weird kicks, but Nelson looked big and his cardio held up. He's had problems with that in the past, but dealt some real good damage. Didn't even really get off too much of his wrestling, but was just able to do well on his feet and won a pretty good fight against
Yeah.
Blake Builder. But it's his first win in almost 4 years, so he really needed this.
Yeah, he was 1-3, 1-3-1 in the UFC before this. So I assume if he lost this, he would have been cut. This is a big win from Kyle Nelson. I mean, gets to stay in the UFC.
Yeah, and the next fight was sick. 3 for 3 for the Canadians after this. Ayman Zahabi, brother of Faraz Zahabi, legendary coach, puts on the biggest win of his career. This kid has a lot of legacy with his family, but hasn't really done too much in the UFC. But I mean, he puts out Ori Kyongi, the Chinese fighter, in 1 minute. As soon as he landed the punch, he knew it was over. He tried to step away. Alatang was kind of hanging in there, so we finished off with some ground and pound. Crowd erupted. This was a quick finish, and this really was kind of like, damn, these Canadians might do something special tonight.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great performance from Ayman Zahabi. This fight was very short, but we saw while the fight lasted that I know I'm pronouncing this wrong, but Aorichi Long, I think that's how Anik pronounced it. He was throwing those leg kicks, he was throwing a lot of leg kicks, and you could see Zahabi like timing the leg kicks. and that's what led to the knockout. He timed the leg kick, he grabbed it, he threw the overhand right. It didn't land, but he kept coming forward and threw that huge left and knocked him out. So it was impressive. Timing those leg kicks is hard, man, but he did it and he got the KO.
Yeah, really, really nice win. And the next fight was
Oh wait,
definitely.
oh
Oh,
wait.
sorry. Go
By the
ahead.
way, Sahabi 3 in a row now.
Yeah.
Just saying, 3 in a
So
row.
I feel like he hasn't been too active though. I mean that's
Nah,
one
he
of
fights
the
like
ish.
once a
Yeah,
year.
exactly. So if he really wants to put some momentum, he's gonna have to try to step into there a couple more times, and he'll get the step up in competition eventually. And then just moving down the card, second to last prelim, Jasmine Judovicius puts on a good performance over Miranda Maverick, who, if you remember, at one time was one of the most hyped female prospects, and since then she's had 3 losses in the UFC. This was a really frustrating performance, in my opinion, from Maverick because every time she shot for a takedown, she ended up on bottom. And Judovicius was showing off a really good takedown defense, which was kind of known about her going in. And she showed off like some really strong knees in the clinch, was doing good work in the clinch. And Miranda Maverick kind of just proved that, she at one point she had a lot of hype and it's just fallen off. She really, I don't think will even be someone in the UFC. Maybe she needs to drop down. She's a little small for the weight class, if you ask me. She's real short, real tiny. I think the shortest fighter in the entire division. But yeah, good one from Judovicius, and that was 4-0 for the Canadian fighters. Yeah, and then I don't think really too much more to say about that. But this next fight, definitely we have some things to talk about. Chris Curtis somehow, for the second fight in a row, gets headbutted. Like, I mean, clearly he's doing something to cause these headbutts. But before this, he was kind of getting worked, if you ask me, by Namadine Imavov, who's someone he lost in his last fight, a tough fight against Chris Curtis's best friend, his boy Sean Strickland. So before that, he had a lot of success in the UFC, and so this was a big win for him. I mean, you got the French flag in the background, so you must have been. This wasn't a win for him. Excuse me,
Yeah.
misspoke. He should have got the win, in my opinion. I mean, it was over. I believe it was over halfway through the second round, so I don't see why they couldn't score the first 2 rounds, and it would have easily gone to Imavaev. Because he was dominating Chris Curtis. I mean, he was looking sharp on the feet, and his grappling was looking good. Had a lot of back control time in the first round, and he was doing damage. Curtis really had nothing for him. He was showing him there's levels.
Yeah, I mean, this was Southpaw versus Orthodox, and you see head clashes happen all the time when Southpaw versus Orthodox. Both guys duck down and they clash heads, and the fight ends. And this sucks for both fighters. Chris Curtis we saw him pleading to the ref like, "I want to fight, no, I want to fight, no, give me one more minute, no, give me one more minute." Um, the ref eventually had to call it, but this sucks especially for Imavov, man. He was out there and he was looking really good. This might be the best Imavov has ever looked. He was really utilizing all his weapons. Like he was piecing up Chris Curtis on the feet. He was using the right hand well. And also, he was the first man to take Chris Curtis down in the UFC. And Imavov's like, he's mostly a striker, and he was the first guy to take Chris Curtis down. So that was fun. Um, Imavov was working with the 1-2 really well. He understood the range, he was controlling the range really well. He had the height and reach on Curtis, so that obviously helped. And the 1-2 was working really well. The 1-2 was really fast. It's just disappointing for both these guys, especially Imavov. He was coming up super quick, lost to Sean Strickland, obviously. And then this fight, it's been a tough last 2 fights for Imavov, but I'm excited to see what's next for him. I mean, this is the best he's ever looked, so you can only really go up from here from a no contest.
Yeah, and I think the UFC will probably do him justice in the matchmaking for his next fight and book him with someone as if he won this fight. Give him a step up to top 10 level. And as far as Chris Curtis, tough fighter, powerful fighter. But he's not going to be. He's not. He can't hang with the Sharks. Middleweight. for a long time was kind of considered a division that didn't have too much depth, but I think now really there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of tough guys, especially if you look at all these Russian guys now coming in. There's like three of them between Abbas Nurmagomedov, the one that just knocked out Phil Hawes, and this new guy fucking with one eye. Um,
Yeah,
and then you just put out with all these other guys, Brendan Allen, Roman Dolidze. There's
Andre
really,
Muniz.
yeah, there's really a lot of dogs at middleweight. My boy Chris Weidman coming back.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then the next fight, it was another couple of pretty good middleweights. I think both these guys put on a. I mean, it was a great fight, but I think both these guys put on a really good performance. Marc-Andre Barut, this was a pay-per-view opener. Definitely got it right. Definitely started the card off with a banger. He dropped Anders really early. But Anders stood tough. He didn't go out. He stayed in the fight. These guys were fighting in a phone booth, throwing bombs. I have no idea how neither of these guys went to sleep. I mean, they were getting rocked. Um, Barriot was doing a lot of damage on the back foot. Anders was really applying some good pressure on him throughout the fight. But Barriot was showing off crisp striking. He was landing a really nice two, a really nice straight hand, and he's known for his cardio, and his cardio definitely took over. But Anders, didn't fade, look great. One of the better performances of Anders' career, if you ask me. But both these guys, just credit to them for putting on a great fight for the fans. They got fight of the night. And yeah, Barrett will get a step up in his next fight. Great win for him in his home country. You can't get it better than that.
yeah. Fun fact about this fight: my grandpa's name is Macombre, and that's a
Really?
pretty yeah, it's a pretty rare name. So I had to root hard for Barriel in this fight. As you said, man, it was a crazy fight, especially the first round. Like that had some crazy pace to it. Um, as you said, Barriel had the early knockdown. And then Eric Andrews like kind of had him against the fence, and he was throwing some knees to the body. Overall, this was a really good fight and a good win for Barriel. That nice to see him beat Eric Andrews, who's like an athletic, pretty well-rounded guy. So this is a great fight, like the best possible way to start off a pay-per-view. And we keep seeing the UFC do this. Like they'll put like good fights at the beginning of the pay-per-view, ones that they'll know will have action and brawlers to like get like I guess the casual fan into it. And I like that. So this was a very good pay-per-view opener.
Yeah, yeah, definitely picked the right card to open the pay-per-view. And like we were saying before, I mean, this just shows middleweight is a really stacked division. These guys got a lot of options and are gonna have a lot of tough fights going forward, both of them. Especially Anders. Anders, I think he's kind of hit his peak as a fighter, but Barriot definitely can make a push towards the top of the division. And the next fight was another, really good scrap in my opinion. Danny Gay shows off, kind of levels, showed off he's just way faster than Nate Landwehr. Nate Landwehr is tough. He's always gonna hang tough. He has some good striking too, was throwing a strong teep kick down the middle, was heavy on the pressure, but Ige was too fast for him and just too good. He had sharper combos. He was wobbling him, and he won a unanimous decision. People were talking shit, saying 5 rounds Nate would have won, but Nate's kind of he talked himself some hype, which is good for him, good for his career, but he can't hang with someone like Ige, and it's nice to see Ige after he took those 3 losses in a row. Who knows what his career could have turned to, and then since then, 2 really good performances back to back now against tough competition too. It's not like he's fighting bums.
Yeah, as you said, this was a good win for Danny Ige. It's fun to see him back winning. Like he was coming up, and basically before that Calvin Cater loss, like I remember he had a ton of hype around him. I was super excited to see what he could do. Then loses to Calvin Cater, beats Gavin Tucker, and then loses 3 in a row. Granted, the three like good fighters, the Korean Zombie, Josh Emmett, and Movsar Evloev, like those are three of the top guys in the division. But since then, he's gotten 2 back-to-back wins, and this was a good win. I thought, early on they were like pretty evenly matched, but Dan Ige just kept putting the pressure on and kept wearing Landor down, and that's kind of what got him, I think, the win, like the upper hand. And we saw Dan Ige hurt Landor, knock him down a couple of times with that left hand. The left hand was working. Dan Ige just like an athletic, quick striker, small guy. He's fun to watch. I don't think he'll ever, no disrespect, but I'm just being honest. I don't think he'll ever, crack the top five or anything. But he's a guy to always watch out for if he's on a UFC card. I mean, he's going to deliver an entertaining fight, and he could string some wins together here.
Yeah, yeah, kind of gonna turn like into a gatekeeper probably for like the top
Yeah,
15 throughout his career. But like you said, he's a fun, entertaining striker, which is what the UFC loves, and he's kind of like a almost like a typical Hawaiian fighter. He's a dog though. He's no easy fight. So
yeah. The
gatekeeper
Hawaiians are
is not a
tough, man.
yeah, really tough. It's
Yeah,
crazy. It's the Polynesian blood.
yeah.
Yeah, and then let's just keep it going. I mean, this was, the guy who said all week he's gonna put on for Canada, and after five Canadian wins in a row, I mean, Mike Mallet must have been feeling the pressure. He said he's gonna continue to get his finish streak. I think this was 10 fights in a row or something, 10 finishes in a row. Really crazy. Every fight in the UFC is finished. This was just a slick submission. This was a club and slub. So he could have knocked him out. Let's not get it twisted because he rocked Fugit. Be careful how you say that name. We don't want to get canceled. Um, but he rocked him and he was out, but he went for the submission, and the submission was a sick one. It was like a modified guillotine. Gordon Ryan actually posted about it, broke it down. It's a really cool post. He like overextended on the arm, went under the armpit. It's called like a high lock guillotine or something. Gordon Ryan talked about it out. Gordon Ryan took credit for inventing the move and said he'd never seen it used in the UFC before. And yeah, it just shows Mallett's a student of the game, which is what's kind of known about him. He took some time off fighting to be a coach and coach over in Team Alpha Male. And now that he's, back fighting, that time studying paid off. He's really a dangerous fighter. Definitely needs to step up in competition in his next fight, but he's good on the mic. He's entertaining. He's cerebral, and he's entertaining in the octagon too. A lot of people were saying he won the press conference. He was the most entertaining in the press conference, one thing. But then with all the pressure in the world on him to go put on, maybe not the best performance of the night, but just up there with any of the other Canadian fighters. Got a dominant finish. Crowd goes crazy. I'm being great job, and it's gonna be cool to see what he does in his career.
Yeah, as you said, Mike Mallet is a student of the game. He's a good wrestler and he's strong. He's good everywhere. He's a good wrestler and he's got power, and that wrestling will set up, his striking. He's a really good grappler. Four of his last five wins have been by submission. And one thing I really want to touch on in this fight against Adam Fugit was the body shots. Mike Mallet went 10 for 10 to the body. He was throwing that body kick, and that shit was unstoppable. I mean, it was landed well, and it was doing damage on Fugit. And obviously, the finish was, the Zahabi finish was good, but I honestly really like this one more just because of how dynamic it was. It was the crazy like combo knockdown to the guillotine. He had like the step in right hook to the left hook, dropped him, and then jumped on him. And as you said, I don't know what you said, but like that modified guillotine choke or whatever. Um, he looked really good, and he's a guy to watch out for. This welterweight's always stacked, man. Um, we'll see. As for Adam Fugit, like he's kind of, you know, he's not he's kind of hit his peak. I feel like,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this was just, so he's not on this level. I don't know. Maybe he's not a UFC fighter, level fighter. He's 1-2 in the UFC now, but he was, had a good performance in his last fight. So I think he'll get another shot out there. But Mike Mallett's on a whole nother level, and like you said about the
yeah,
body kick, I almost guarantee that's something that they studied in the tape and they knew would be there because this guy's a coach. First and foremost, he's exploited weaknesses he's already seeing in his opponents, and It's interesting to see. I'm curious to see who they'll match him up with next. Um, I don't know, 170. I think they could give him. I think they should probably try to build his hype up, give him another winnable matchup. But
Yeah,
yeah, it'll be a good one, and
he's
definitely
got
if
a the welterweight division is so stacked. He's got a couple more until he cracks the top 15.
yeah, and then when he gets in the top 15, it's gonna be some killers. Maybe
Yeah,
I don't know. This next fight, I mean, this was a big one. This was a people's main event. This fight almost unanimously, what everyone was most excited for. And the king is back, man. Charles Oliveira knocks out Beneil Dariush. Crazy knockout. I mean, the head kick to the ground and pound, scary knockout. He was doing damage, man. I mean, could have definitely stopped the fight a little earlier. But Dariush is a warrior. He would have wanted to go out on his shield. Dariush was having a little success early with the grappling, got a takedown, had some control, but closing out the first round, Dariush throws that wicked head kick up. He shows off his Muay Thai skills. The head kick was so fast, rocked Dariush, and then after that, I mean, he's so dangerous. When he got him on the ground with the ground and pound and had his back wrapped, I mean, Dariush must have it's terrifying, man, to have that guy on you, throwing so much power and also just knowing he's gonna strangle you if you even give him the littlest inch. I mean, he's terrifying, and I think they got to do the rematch with Islam. He deserves it.
yeah, for sure. He definitely deserves a rematch with Islam. This win was bittersweet for me. I'm a big fan of both of these guys, and it was bittersweet. It was hard seeing Darius get put out. He'll be back. It was also amazing to see Charles Oliveira back in the win column. This guy's just a legend, man. Like a complete staple of the UFC and the lightweight division. He definitely deserves a title shot. And in this fight, man, like he kept pulling guard. And I was like watching. I was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" I was yelling at my computer because he kept pulling guard. And as you know, like as everybody knows in MMA, it's kind of a faux pas. But he kept pulling guard, and he looked great off his back. Like I feel like he was landing more than Dariush off his back, than Dariush was in his full guard. And then Dariush would like have these huge punches, and he'd like punch a hole through the octagon. Like he'd wind up and just Oliveira would just make him miss. And then once he got to the feet, like Oliveira was just obviously the better striker. He landed those head kicks and got the finish. And man, this is exciting. I, I love to see him against Islam again. I think that Islam would win. I think Islam wins again, but just, Charles Oliveira, like, you never know what you're going to get out of him. I mean, you know that you're going to get violence and a great finish, but against Islam, it's hard, man. I mean, how do you think that matchup stacks up?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could all say Charles did not put on his best performance against Islam in the first fight. It was really lackluster. I think he'll go into I would guess he'd go into his next fight with Islam really aggressive, really try to put the pressure on him. I don't think he'll be pulling guard against Islam because Islam showed him he can control him on the ground, and I think he'll look to hurt Islam on the feet. But Islam is so sound defensively. It's
Yeah,
and if the fight goes on to the later rounds, I promise Islam will take over, which is and I don't think Charles can sub him on the ground. But I really think if Charles puts the pressure on him, he can rock Islam, man, and he can hurt him and sting him. He's just got to, be able to
yeah,
land it and not accept bottom position. I mean, he's one of the greatest grapplers ever. I mean, 19 post fights bonuses. This kid is gonna have all the records when it's all said and done. He's been in the UFC since he was so young. Long as he stays healthy and continues fighting as long as he wants to, he's gonna end up on all the record books all time, man. He's gonna be like the LeBron James of UFC for at least the next 5-10 years. Really, I mean, eventually it'll be surpassed by one of these 20 or 21-year-old kids who will spend 20 years in the UFC. But 950,000. His next post fight bonus will be $1 million in post fight bonuses. 20. I mean, just an absolute legend. You can put him into UFC right now, Hall of
yeah. That's
Fame right now.
crazy. and he still lives in the favelas, He's
King
that
of the
kind of
king of the
guy.
king of the fellas.
But when Islam Makhachev was controlling him in that first fight, like that was after Islam did hurt Oliveira on the feet. So Oliveira wasn't all there. In this rematch, I assume we're gonna get it. I think that Islam's striking is underrated. We look at a lot of these Dagestani guys who are like, oh, they're only wrestlers, and Habib's striking wasn't very good. His striking was only opened up by his wrestling, but Islam Makhachev is a far more technical and better striker than Habib is, and I think that he can be underrated in the striking. That being said, I do think that Charles Oliveira is a better striker. Just the way he put out Dariush in this fight shows that. Charles Oliveira probably has the length there. And I would like to see their exchanges on the ground. I don't, if like minus maybe Islam's ground and pound, I would really like to see like Islam wrestling and Charles Oliveira on his back. It's just an awesome combination, like the Russian Dagestani wrestling and the Brazilian amazing jiu-jitsu. Kind of like Ben Askren, Damian Maya, but like really good. So I that's a fight that I'm super looking forward to. You can't ever count out Charles Oliveira, no matter how the last fight went. He's just a crazy fighter, unpredictable, and he could sub Islam. I don't see it happening. I'd see Islam winning on the ground, but it's possible. You never know with Oliveira, man.
Yeah, and a lot of people wrote Charles off going into this fight. He was the underdog. Beneil was a favorite. Notice Beneil Savage been on a killer win streak. Had a great fight in his win against the super tough Matez Gamrot. So it's fair that Beneil came in here as a favorite. But you've seen Chael Sonnen guaranteeing lock of the year is Beneil Dariush will win, no question about it. It's disrespectful for everything, Charles. He's beaten the entire top five of the all number 1 through 5 of the UFC. All of them been beaten by Charles Oliveira. And the only guy Islam has beaten in the same rankings is Charles. That's Islam's only win. Charles has beat all the other guys, every single one of them. Gaethje, Poirier, Chandler, Dariush. Not just beat them all, finished them all.
Yeah, I mean that just shows how good he is. Like he could beat anybody on any given night. But these Dagestanis, man, people might not like it, but they're very good, especially Islam. I think he's a generational talent.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, exactly. With as much as we are hyping Charles up, Islam whooped his ass, so but I think Islam definitely had some advantages. The fight was in Abu Dhabi. Do it in Brazil. Islam got to do it pretty much on his home territory. Abu Dhabi's home territory for them. Let's do it in Charles' backyard and let's see how it goes then. But I mean, they did just make Islam fight in Australia against Volk, so that's pretty foul to make him go against Charles in Brazil.
Yeah. I mean, Islam in Brazil would be insane. That atmosphere would be crazy.
Yeah, I mean crazy.
He needs some security guard. He need like a whole escort to be able to get out of Brazil alive if he beats Oliveira.
Yeah, I mean, you know how those Dagestanis travel though, so he'll already have
Yeah,
plenty
true.
all his cousins as security guards.
Yeah, like when Habib was flapping what's his
Ar-
name?
Artem Lobov,
Yeah, the best fighter of all time.
crazy.
Yeah.
And then we already touched on it a little, but Amanda Nunes puts on a vintage performance. This was she, not whatever, didn't get a finish, but Irene Aldana is tough. Irene Aldana fought completely scared. She was intimidated by Amanda Nunes. She, it almost like, oh, I'm fighting my idol, whatever. It didn't even look like she really came in the best shape. Amanda dominated her, good great grappling, really heavy strikes on the feet, doing a lot of damage, and then gets to go out on top, retires as top of 2 weight classes. We don't know if we'll ever see that in the UFC again. Like we said, like a lot of people have said, um, Juliana Pena has been crying a lot. There was a really, in my opinion, she has become like the Henry Cejudo level, like cringe, like cr really funny, like, but laughing at her, not with her.
Yeah.
After, Amanda's enjoying the retirement with her family, Julian like, she's scared of me. She's scared of me. I scared her into retire. Like, bro, come on. You couldn't even show up to this fight. And you got you got your face bashed in the last fight. What are you talking about? Respect Amanda. She beat your ass. You got lucky. You beat her on her worst day. Congrats. But yeah, whatever. Pena will probably get the title fight in her next fight, and I hope she gets whipped on. She's become one of the more, you know, annoying fighters on the roster for me. But I think there's a lot of questions about what's next for definitely 145. I mean, I think it's done. I think Dana has pretty much said so. But even 135, if you really look at it, it's a really, really weak division. There's really not a lot of names in that division.
Nah,
And
I mean, there's not. It's like how many fighters in that division?
it's got to be like barely 30.
Yeah. So, but I mean, this win, like when we talk about Real Don's performance, she looked flat. She didn't look herself, and it's hard because it's a championship fight. She's going up against the greatest women's MMA fighter of all time. She's obviously like nervous, and it showed. She Amanda Nunes had 7 minutes of control time on the ground, which shows just how like strong and dominant she is. You know, as respectful as possible. No women's fight, except for maybe Valentina Shevchenko, is going to be like super like technical and like blow your mind away when it comes to technicalities. Amanda Nunes fits into that category as well, but she's just stronger than any other female. She's bigger, stronger. She's got great wrestling. She could just hold you down there. And she totally outstriked Irene Aldana too, which I honestly did not expect. I mean, Aldana's a great striker. Usually, not this fight, but she usually is. Irene Aldana just looked flat, and she landed three body strikes to Nunes's 28 body strikes, and all the other striking categories were clear differences. Amanda Nunes goes out on top, and she's definitely Hall of Fame. She's the greatest women's fighter of all time, easily.
Yeah, I mean, legendary career for Amanda Nunes. So nothing but respect to her. And we'll see where the UFC goes from here with these two divisions. Um, as far as other things going on in the combat sports this world, it was a little earlier in this week, Thursday. PFL, definitely some things we want to talk about real quick. I mean, Marlon Moraes, 7 knockout losses in a row. What happened? I mean, I just read that he is indefinitely suspended by the commission, so he's not even allowed to fight anymore, which
I
thankfully. But I mean,
think he
this guy was
retired.
he did retire too, but you know how MMA retirements go.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I mean, wow, one of the biggest fall from graces I think we'll ever see. I mean, he went from fighting for the title, one of the pound for pound, arguable best fighters in the world, best bantamweights in the world, to getting knocked out 7 times in a row. And you have to really worry, what type of long-term effects this is gonna have on the guy. That's not something you ever want to see. But it's gonna be hard to look back on it, especially as the years pass by. You'll kind of only see those 7 losses in a row. But Magic Marlon Moraes is a special fighter. He's the last guy, besides, Peter Yan, but doesn't count, to beat Aljamain Sterling. And he put Aljamain Sterling out with one of the coolest KOs I think we'll ever see in the UFC. A great head kick, but he landed it flush with his knee to Aljo's dome. And had a lot of great performances in the UFC and outside of the UFC, um, as well. He was a legend in World Series of Fighting. So besides the 7 lot, looking past that, Marlon Moraes definitely, had a great career.
Yeah. Um, he had a great career at the height of his at the height of his MMA career. He was fighting for the bantamweight championship. He obviously lost to Henry Cejudo, but he was up there, man. He was a top contender for a while. And it's sad to see, man. Ever since that Corey Sandhagen fight, it's just been no chin, just straight like finishes, finish losses. And just this just goes to show that MMA is a unforgiving, ruthless, brutal sport that, I mean, as I said, unforgiving. It does not care who you are, or how you feel. If you're not good enough to win, you're not good enough to win, and you're gonna get KO'd. And it's sad to see. He had a great career, and it's tough to go out on 7 losses like that. But you shouldn't feel ashamed of anything.
Yeah, definitely not. And some other notes from this card: Moldav Kadalaev, another one of Khabib's boys, remains undefeated. I think 11-0 now, 12-0, something like that. This guy has a lot of hype. He's a big, big fan favorite in all of his fights. He was the 2021 PFL champ. He got injured last year, so he's never lost. And he submits Tyler Diamond, who's a tough guy. He's fought in the UFC on Tough. He's only had 2 career losses. He's had a lot of success inside of the PFL. He's like a team alpha male guy, and this guy Kadyrov throws heat on the feet. He's known for the flying knees, and he was throwing it in this fight, and then got the fight to the ground and strangled him, submitted him. And then in the main event, also in 145-pound division, massive upset. Jesus Pinedo knocks out the reigning defending champ Brendan Loughnane in round one. Loughnane's a solid, solid fighter. He won the million last year, and now he's out of the playoffs with this loss. After this loss, Pinedo stole his spot in the playoffs. He had to knock him out. He got it done. He put on for his country, put on for Peru. Not really an MMA hotbed. Probably one of the few fighters from over there, but a great win and a shocking win. He was a huge underdog.
Yeah, Brendan Loughnane is like one of the premier PFL fighters. I mean, he was one of the main PFL guys that I looked into before the year started. I was like, okay, watch out for this guy. I remember Ariel Helwani was talking about Brendan Loughnane on like his fighter of the year for 2022.
Huh.
And by the way, the guy you just talked about, Movled Kai Bulayev, beat Brendan Loughnane
Yeah,
in
yeah,
2021.
for the
It just shows how
championship.
good he is.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
he's pretty much going to dominate from here on out with Loughnane out of the competition and moving on to the playoffs. So, maybe after he secures a second million, he'll come over and fight in the UFC. May see really, because whatever PFL. I know you got Francis Ngannou now, but it's not you're not fighting Alex Volkanovski or Yair
Nah.
Rodriguez in PFL.
If you want to be the best in the world, you got to be in the UFC. But
Exactly. And then did you see what happened at the Floyd Mayweather John Gotti
yeah,
fight? Crazy brawl. I mean, this
that
was a
was
bro.
crazy.
This They were brawling. I seen like Instagram models like thoughts getting arrested. Seriously, from the brawl was backstage. It was in the ring.
Damn.
Madness. I mean, just he's a circus. I mean,
Yeah.
Floyd Mayweather puts on circuses and whatever.
I mean, the most surprising thing about this fight for me was how many people were actually there. Like, I didn't know people actually watched this shit. I didn't know people actually paid attention to Floyd Mayweather's career in exhibition matches. It's beyond me. I haven't watched any of his fights, but this was crazy. I mean, Floyd Mayweather runs deep, man. Like Gotti was like trying to attack him after the fight, and like fucking 40 people ran in the ring. It was mayhem. And honestly, not a good show for boxing. Even if it was an exhibition match, it is a really good look.
I mean, I don't think Floyd counts for boxing anymore. I mean,
Yeah,
the
true.
list of fighters he's fought since Manny Pacquiao is crazy. I mean, Logan Paul, Conor, like you couldn't make this up in a book. Logan Paul, Conor McGregor, John Gotti Jr., Money Kicks, Deji,
Deji.
like
He's
like
just getting money now.
yeah, I guess. I mean,
And I've heard they all suck too. Like none of them have action.
yeah, because he
So
doesn't. All he does is they can't hit him. There's nothing they can do.
yeah.
And then, just wrap it up with some fight announcements since the last time we recorded. Ignacio Bahamondes versus Ludwig Klein will be a banger. Those guys are both really deadly strikers on the feet. OSP versus Kudalaba. I think this is weird matchmaking. Kudalaba's gonna knock him out in the first round, but Kudalaba's coming off a really nice win over Tanner Boser. OSP hasn't kissed a win in years. Maybe they're punishing him, making him fight a really scary guy, hard hitter.
Yeah,
Um,
I like Kutalaba a lot. Like he's just a constant action. He gets in your face. He screams at you. So
I mean
I'm always tuning in.
he's gonna knock him out in the first round.
Yeah,
Billy Quarantillo versus Damon Jackson. Kind of middling 145ers, but both good fighters. I'm a fan of Billy Q. I'll be rooting for him in that one. Song Yadong versus Rob Font, banger. That's a really good
yeah,
fight. That's whoever wins. I mean, after Song's last performance, I mean, I think he probably, we've seen Rob Font have some chin issues in the past. I think Song Yadong could definitely put him out here.
yeah. Um, both these fighters are high quality fighters. Both like in the top five, six of the bantamweight division, which is stacked. Probably the best division in MMA right now. It's a huge fight for that division. Big big like fork in the road for both of these guys. A win does a lot. A loss kind of sets it back. It doesn't do too much, but a win here will propel both of these guys' careers in a long way.
Yeah, and then last one I think worth noting, kind of another weird matchup. Arman Sorokin takes on Joaquim Silva. We know the hype behind Arman. We know the talent behind Arman. Silva's not really a guy overly familiar with, but should be a good fight. I'm tuning in anytime Armand pops in the octagon.
Yeah, Arman's great. I mean, you saw in his UFC debut, like he came in on short notice and fought Islam Makhachev and like got him pretty close. Islam did win every round, but Arman had his moments and out wrestled Islam in some moments. Arman Tsarukyan is just one of these up and coming lightweight guys that I could see taking over the division. I see him in the top two or three in the next couple of years, fighting for a title probably against Islam, hopefully. Joaquim Silva, I don't really know anything about him, but it doesn't. He's 1-2 in his last three fights. I don't think this will be a challenge for Arman Tsarukyan. His last knockout was a flying knee, and then punches. So maybe he could catch Arman on the takedown, but I don't see it happening. I think we all know how this fight's gonna go. It's gonna be a Tsarukyan wrestling domination.
Yeah, Armand's just next level. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up, man. I had fun breaking down the fights. We had a lot to talk about. I hope you guys enjoyed. We're gonna be back again a little bit. We have a lot to talk about this week. Bellator, UFC, and PFL. A lot to break down. Tough coming. So we'll definitely be excited to preview what's going down and then break it down after the fights happen.
Yeah, thank you everybody for watching.
All right, man.